All right, so we are going to get started today and start talking about police accountability, related issues, and just for like extra spice, the app that I was using, Notability, has updated, so everything's different. And for extra juice, there's a chance that I will sing 22 by Taylor Swift because my friend Anthony was like, "You need to listen to this Red album because I'm not a huge Swiftie. He is. He's like, you would like it." And now I have 22 stuck in my head. I remember that song came out. It's pretty weird. But anyway, no one cares about my old memories about when 22 came out. I actually had a birthday card from my college girlfriend who gave me a card that's like, "You're 22, like Taylor." Anyway, too much for today. So, if we think about like police accountability, right? There's the kind of things that we're trying to be beholden to, right? And more often than not, we're related to misconduct, and both in its prevention and our ability to maybe like address these concerns, address and hold people accountable for behavior. Does this need to be bigger? I don't know. I would ask y'all if you think this is better. I think it's better. We're going to leave it this size. Sorry for the inconsistency. For their misbehavior, right? And so if we think about accountability, right, we have to think about, what exactly is going to be the misconduct kind of thing, right? So if you remember what makes police especially different from other people, we have, a few things that are related to it, right? One is they can use force against other people, something that we know, right? Whether this is putting hands on someone, putting handcuffs, discharging a taser at someone, or using like a deadly, like a gun or something like that, right? So there's their force use of force case, right? We also know that they have the power to search and seize people, right? So I can stop someone on the street. If I'm a police officer, I can like pat their hands down, stuff down. I can like, check their backpack. Under certain circumstances, right? Like I can, search your home for like evidence or contraband and so on, right? I can arrest you and take you to jail against your will, right? So, these are pretty significant powers, right? But the one where we start getting to the questions most about misconduct, right, is that we recognize that these are often necessary for police work, right? And we know we want police to have these powers, these abilities to be able to use force, to search people, to arrest them if needed, right? I think we all agree that those are pretty necessary in certain circumstances, right? But the part where we start getting into like misconduct and like trying to regulate behavior, right, is through discretion, right, which is probably the single most important issue in criminal justice system. The reason for this, right, is that if we think about it, right, discretion, right, is going to be something that is going to vary by department based off of like the rules, the regulations, what is or is not acceptable, right? But it's also going to vary by officer, depending on how they interpret and view a situation, what is not allowable, what their training level is, their interest in getting developed more training, and so on, right? It also depends on the culture within departments, right, as well, right? So there's also a department culture aspect. So this becomes a problem, right? Because if we understand that this kind of thing varies, right, quite a bit, right, this has the opportunity for inconsistency. So what we aim to do when we're trying to limit inconsistency, right? If we're trying to say that this is, going to be less of a problem, we want it to be a problem, right? Is that if we have inconsistency, right, this creates an opportunity for a perceived prejudice or real, perceived or real prejudice by an officer. Um, and the other part that's, comes into it, right, is that, you can have, really like disparate outcomes, right? So meaning that it varies a lot. So the thing is, right, if we understand, that these are the potential problems with, having discretion, right? Because if we're talking about disparate outcomes in terms of like arrest or issuing a citation or searching someone, or arresting someone or using force against someone, right? This creates like, a lot of like opportunities, for misbehavior, right? And having discretion, right, and leaving so much to like an officer, right, creates a lot of power, right, because a lot of things are left into their hands to figure out, right? Now, I guess like part of what we need to understand, right, is like why do officers have this amount of discretion to begin with? So I guess like we have to like maybe consider like what are police, like called for, right? So if we think about, the police role, more often than not, right, we judge police by their ability to do what, right? Control crime. And we want to do that also to, keep people safe. These are, how police are typically judged in terms of if they're doing a good job or not, right? On like the quality of their work. Yeah, this is the right, you know, ink size. Okay, good. Or at least I think so. Hopefully you guys see it better. So if we understand like this is true, right? So if we're judging police based off of these roles, right? Then this is the only thing that we're calling police for, right? In theory. But in reality, we call police for like everything, right? We call police if there is a suspicious person. We, call people, about noisy neighbors, right, who are having a party next door. We call people about, sometimes, it could be like, juveniles hanging out somewhere, and the thing is, will also call police, right, for like, domestic problems that aren't necessarily criminal, right? Not like necessarily like an instance of like domestic violence, although the police are called for that as well. But it could be like I have a disagreement, with my brother about something, and there's like a conflict resolution kind of thing. That could be, for example, I mean, that could be like any number of things, right? Like, my brother says he's going to do this if I don't do that, and so on, right? There are also cases where there are, mental health calls. So someone's coming in and they're, suicidal or anxious or depression, right, or something like that. There's a whole, host of things that we call police for related to that, right? Or police are often called, right, in, drug, overdose situations. So someone, like OD'd on heroin or fentanyl or something like that, right? And they're, passed out, right? They're often called and they respond to these kinds of scenes, right? So what this means, right, is that we can take our blue and then we match it with our yellow here, right? Is that we often call the police for far more than they're judged on. You know, or officially anyway, right? Because we don't really judge police, right, on like how many overdoses they prevented, how many lives they saved that way. We don't really call them for like their conflict resolution. We don't like judge them on how effective they are in that, right? But we often call on them to do that, right? What this creates, this sort of like addiction to calling police, if you will, right, is a situation of where the police have, there's a lot of ambiguity about what is and is not police work. And because there's like a whole wide range of different calls, different situations and circumstances, right, there's also ambiguity on what an officer should do, right? Because a lot of these situations, aren't necessarily covered like in a training book. They're rapidly evolving. They change a lot. Um, maybe they're not covered in a training camp, or there's may not be a field training officer nearby. I can remember like another one, right? Related to this, could be, like there's like an animal in my house, right? And they want the police to come, or there's like a rattlesnake they want them to take care of, right? So, there's like, whatever, right? There's all kinds of stuff. But because you have this high level of ambiguity with like police and what they should and should not be doing, right? This creates an opportunity where the discretion is given to navigate all these decisions, these new areas, right? Now, again, we want to give people enough room where they can handle the wider range of calls that are coming in, right? But we also, as we discussed earlier, like creates an opportunity where there's a lot of opportunity for that to be abused or be inconsistent or biased, right? And so when we think about police accountability, right, we're trying to limit instances of police misconduct where the authority of police are is like abused, right? So when we think about, misconduct related issues, more often than not, right, we're looking at, an abuse of discretion that creates harm. So when we think about, accountability, we're thinking about like how do we control and supervise officer discretion. Okay, so we'll pause here and we'll continue on.